Aloha Aina, and welcome to Voices of Truth, one-on-one with Hawaii's future, brought to you by the Koani Foundation. I'm Ehu Kekahu Cardwell, and here we are today once again in beautiful Nu'uanu Valley. And we have on the show a very special guest, Leon Siu. Leon,
Aloha.
Aloha. Welcome. So good to have you on the show.
Mahalo. Good to be here.
Good. We wanted to do another segment with you because, of course, we're talking about going to Washington, D.C. and helping to defeat the Akaka bill.
Mm-hmm.
And we wanted to cover three topics that were so important to cover, we felt, for our viewers, that we haven't been able to yet in previous segments.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you want to start out by giving just a real brief recap, what was this experience like for you, going to the Hill and putting out the message you did to the U.S. Senate?
Well, it was a very invigorating experience.
Yeah.
Because we appeared in Washington, D.C. with no real expectations, except that we knew we had a fight before us. But we also knew that doors had opened up in such a way that we also had favor. And so we moved in and just started speaking the truth, just telling people what was really at stake, the senators in particular and their Senate staff.
Great.
And the reception was really, really extraordinary.
Yes, I know that it was. It was phenomenal work you guys did. Now, to recap for our viewers one more time, what was the main message that you delivered to the Senate?
Well, the Senate was really concerned about the Akaka bill being very racial and all that, but and that was basically their main contention or their main objection to the bill. Those senators who were opposed to the bill, and that it would set up a racially divided community.
Yes.
But what we came to, and I'm talking about Clarence Ching and myself.
Yes, Clarence Koo Ching.
Yes, had arrived there to actually deliver another message which we felt was much more to the core of what our concerns were.
And what is that?
That core is that the Hawaiian people were never consulted and were not actually included in the creation of this bill and of this plan to create a new Indian tribe based on Hawaiians and on being of Hawaiian blood. And it was something that we felt that we resented and that was really an offense to us because it painted the picture that Hawaiians were this racially focused people and that we wanted to have our own country based on race. We wanted to have our own benefits and things like that based on race. And this has never been who we are, and it was a misportrayal of who we really are as a people.
Yes.
That we have always been inclusive, to a fault, really, in many cases. That we're racially mixed. We can't divide our families up according to who has Hawaiian blood or not, because we're all mixed. And so this was something that we felt that the people there in Washington, D.C. should understand, that this bill, the Akaka bill, never had the support or the consent of the Hawaiian people.
Great messages that the people weren't consulted at home, the people weren't for the bill,
Right.
and moreover it was against the ways of the culture and against the ways of the Hawaiian people.
That's right.
How was that message received?
Oh, it was received extremely well because it suddenly rang true to the people there, because many of these senators were doubtful as to what the reason was behind the Akaka bill. Why were the Hawaiians pushing for this new tribal status and things like this? And
Why did they want to become Indians?
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And so what we were saying was that we don't. And they there was a sigh of relief.
Yeah.
And also it fit into what their idea of us really was.
Yes.
Because the Akaka bill was a confusing idea.
Yes.
Of us as a people.
Yes.
And so this really sat true. So the reception was extremely well received, because the senators then realized that we were speaking the truth about who we are.
Yes.
And that the Akaka bill was being a total misrepresentation and was basically a lie.
Yes, and your message, therefore your message had the ring of truth.
Right.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so the Akaka bill was defeated. It didn't, the vote of cloture, they didn't get the 60 votes they needed. And of course, anytime anything like that, of that significance happens, after the smoke clears, people on both sides of the fence tend to take stock of what happened, what didn't happen, what went right, what went wrong. And that's the next thing we want to get to here is, some really smart people sat down and said, okay, what didn't happen that should have happened? that would have made this thing a whole lot better. So share some of those things with us, would you?
Well, of course, the bill was based upon, and as well as many of the Hawaiian entitlement programs since the Hawaiian Homes Act
of 1920,
1920
yeah,
are built upon the premise that the Hawaiians were disenfranchised and were in need of some kind of rehabilitative or some kind of restitution for what had happened in 1893, which was the overthrow of the Hawaiian Kingdom.
Right.
And what the Akaka Bill does, and many of the other entitlement bills or measures do, is that they take that incident of the overthrow of the Hawaiian Kingdom, which is a nation, and then they apply it to a nationality or an ethnic group, Native Hawaiians.
Meaning race.
Meaning race, yes. Defined by race, defined in American law by race, never defined in Hawaiian law or Hawaiian practice by race.
Yes.
But always defined in American law by race. So that's why the Office of Hawaiian Affairs and the Hawaiian Homes Commission and these others have been under attack because they are race-based. But the remedy that the United States has been providing is still race-based. And in fact, they invented the race-based remedy.
Yeah.
And so what we're trying to say is that now the primary objections to the Akaka Bill was because it was race-based, but we didn't create that. The United States did. And if it's objectionable to them now, then that's great, because that's always been objectionable to us.
Yeah.
And that the real issue is not that of how do we provide restitution or recompense or something to Native Hawaiians, but how do we do that for Hawaiian nationals?
Aha. Okay, so good. So let's get into this distinction, because this is a very important one. It's a critical one, and it's the underpinning or explains why the Akaka Bill and legislation like it is flawed from the start. And it also shows by contrast the path to take that is not flawed.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So talk a little bit about these two things.
So the flaw is the distinction or the misdirection of who was really injured.
Yes.
And the real injury came to Hawaiian nationals. And Hawaiian nationals are defined by people who lived in Hawaii at the time of the overthrow.
In other words,
and their heirs.
Okay, so in other words, at the time of the overthrow in 1893, citizens of the Kingdom of Hawaii, and that could mean people of any race or
Correct.
ethnicity.
Anyone who had become a citizen,
Yes.
either by birth or by naturalization.
Right.
And so therefore there was no racial distinction
Right.
as to who was a citizen or a subject
Right.
of the Hawaiian Kingdom.
So at that time, Hawaiian meant like people who live in California are called Californians.
Right.
Regardless of race.
Rather,
Yeah.
whether you're Japanese or Chinese or
Yeah.
Mexican
Right.
or Spanish, then you're still
Yes.
Californian.
Yeah. All right, good.
Correct. So that's who the real injured party was. It
Yeah.
was the people, Hawaiian citizens who lost their nation
Great.
at that overthrow.
Yep.
So to come back years later and to say, well, you lost your nation, so now we're going to bless only the Native Hawaiians.
By blood.
By blood.
Yes.
Yes.
Leaves
And
out a whole
leaves
bunch
out a lot of other people.
Yeah.
And not so many back then, but many more now.
Right.
Because there are many more descendants of the citizens of the Hawaiian Kingdom
Sure.
here in Hawaii.
Sure.
So we are, anyway, so this misdirection is something that we have been trying to correct for a long time. And the implication, of course, is that because the overthrow was illegal, that actually the Hawaiian Kingdom still exists.
Of course.
And that the lands of the Hawaiian Kingdom still exist.
Right.
And still belong to the Hawaiian Kingdom. And that the federal government and the state of Hawaii are actually fraudulent by nature because they are claiming that they are actually the owners of the lands in Hawaii.
Yes.
And this is patently untrue.
It's false. So the state of Hawaii really doesn't exist. It's an ephemera. It's a something that they say exists but doesn't. The United States, of course, does exist, but it is illegally occupying the Hawaiian Kingdom right now.
Correct.
Yes.
Yes.
So they're a foreign power here.
Right.
Yeah.
So what the Akaka Bill would have done was that it would have created another level that we would have had to overcome,
Yes.
another level of deceit and of
Yes.
laws and things like that we would have to overcome. And it would have made it appear, again, like they tried to address the original offense that was made at the overthrow of
Yes.
the Hawaiian Kingdom and the annexation of Hawaii.
Yeah.
So as far as for the restoration of the Hawaiian Kingdom, this was going to present another huge obstacle. So the idea was to go back and hold their feet to the fire and say, the Hawaiian people are not like this. We don't want this kind of a solution. We want something different. Well, of course, we didn't exactly explain what the different solution was that we want to present. But now we're in a position with the defeat of the Akaka Bill. Now the discourse can get onto the real facts.
Yes.
And onto the real avenues that we can pursue for restoration of the Hawaiian Kingdom.
Yes. So, in other words, what you're saying is, if it isn't the Akaka Bill, what is the answer?
Right.
Right. And we're going to get to that in a few minutes. So as you said, one of the fatal mistakes that they made in trying to get the Akaka Bill passed was they tried to create racial divisions amongst people. A second fatal mistake they made was that the fact that all from the beginning this was a top-down dictated solution, rather than going to the grassroots and listening to the people. Yes.
Right. Exactly.
Yes.
And of course we know that the state and the Office of Hawaiian Affairs and all of their lawyers and all of their the Senator Akaka and Inoue and all that,
and the governor
concocted this whole solution.
Yes.
Of course, it has implications as to why they did it. And it goes back again to the ownership of the land, because they were really trying to clear title to the land in a devious way through the Akaka Bill.
They were trying to legitimize the overthrow and grab all title to land over here.
That's right.
Yes, in one fell swoop.
Right. And with the consent and the inadvertent approval by the Hawaiian people who had signed up to be part of this governing entity.
By sleight of hand.
Sleight of hand, exactly. So, so that was one of the things, was that it was created by the bureaucrats who desperately wanted to solve a couple of problems. One, maintain the flow of monies from federal funds to Native Hawaiians, and therefore keep the bureaucracy running, and secondly, to clear title on the land. Those were the two objectives.
Yeah. Okay. What I know, there were some other major mistakes that they made, but speaking to this second one, if that's the mistake, then what's the solution? The solution is for these very people who claim that they know what's best for Hawaiians to come down to the grassroots and ask the people on the land.
Let's talk story. Let's get this down clear. I mean, and obviously they knew the people were opposed to this, because the last 6 years were excluded from the discussion at all, and so they already know the sentiment is not this direction, not toward creating a native Indian tribe which would then subjugate us even further under the United States, into the Department of the Interior this time. So that was their big mistake, was that they presumed in a very, very, they presumed that they knew what was best for Hawaiians without ever asking.
So they need to come and ask Hawaiians what's best for Hawaiians.
And be willing to take the heat for what they've done.
Exactly. All right. So what's another fatal mistake?
Well, another fatal mistake was that they misjudged the ability of the governor to sway the Republican votes in the Senate.
Isn't that interesting? She's a sitting Republican governor. She went to D.C. to the Hill. You would think that she would be able to sway and lobby effectively with fellow Republicans in the Senate. But that wasn't the case.
And instead, because she was campaigning for something that was so obviously flawed, it actually cast distrust, or it undermined her credibility in Washington, D.C. So when she showed up in Washington, D.C. the final days before the vote, this was kind of the capper, because by now the cat was out of the bag, that she was misrepresenting the true sentiments of the people in Hawaii, and she was backing a fatally flawed bill and was going to the mat for it, and people could not understand this. So I think of all the people who may have been harmed by their support of the Akaka Bill, I think Governor Lingle is probably the most, not so necessarily here on the local level, but on the national level. She's done a lot of damage to her own reputation.
Yeah, seen as somebody who didn't do her homework, didn't consult her constituency.
It was an embarrassment.
Yes. Yeah, isn't that something? Isn't that something? So give us a couple more fatal mistakes that were made.
Let's see. I'm just kind of going down a list here.
I know the list is long.
They underestimated the opposition, which was us, and it was easy for them to underestimate us because we really didn't have an organized opposition, so to speak. It was really a grassroots.
It was David
effort.
versus Goliath all the way, wasn't it?
Right.
Yeah. But we know how that one turned out.
Right, and so we were very much underfunded and under trained and all that.
Overworked and underpaid.
Yeah, right. But we had the truth on our side.
Yeah.
And the truth resonated.
Yes.
In Washington D.C.
Yes.
It doesn't always.
Yes.
But in this case, I think also because people really have aloha for Hawaiians.
Yes.
And when Hawaiians show up and say, "Don't do this to us,"
yes.
they listen.
They listen.
And then when we had the facts to present
yes.
people really understood.
Yes.
At least sympathized with us enough
yes.
to listen carefully to
yes.
what we had to say.
You know, when you say that, when you talk about showing up in Congress and saying, "Don't do this to us," what came to my mind immediately was what happened 100 years ago when they took the massive coup petitions to
That's
Washington.
Right.
And entered them into the congressional record and said, "Please don't do this to us." And they didn't. The treaty failed.
Right.
So you're right. When Hawaiians go and speak to other world powers, you know what? They listen.
Right. They do.
They listen because the word aloha, you can go anywhere on the planet, any language, and you say that word, and people know exactly what it means and who the people are that it represents.
And this is our key.
Yes.
So how we're going to bring our nation back again is that if we continue to act with aloha, we continue to be embracing of everybody. We continue to be inclusive. We continue to dialogue and listen carefully to one another. It's going to happen. It
sure is. You know, Leon, I know there are some people that have already said, and maybe some people watching our show here that are going to be sitting there thinking, well, you know what? Those guys went to Washington, D.C. They got the job done, but in order to get the job done, the job accomplished, they were in league with the devil. They actually worked with the Republican far right to help defeat this bill. The Republican far right wanted the bill defeated. We wanted the bill defeated, but for very different reasons. But some people may say, well, that wasn't a good thing to do, to work with the devil to get this bill defeated. What do you say to those people?
Well, first of all, the alternative would have been even worse. That is, if we didn't work with them, then the Akaka bill would have passed, and we would have been in a terrible pickle as far as the nation of Hawaii. But I don't characterize them as the devil. In fact, people who put themselves up for public office and all that usually have an altruistic reason for doing that. They want to serve the people.
Yes.
And they want to do what's right. And so we have to go with that assumption that people are there because they want to do what's right. They may be misguided and not think they may not think like us as to what is right or wrong, but in their hearts they really want to do what's right. So this is where truth can really hold forth. So I have worked for many years with the Republican right, as they're called, because I stand for certain principles that they stand for as well. And you know, most people actually are really conservative in their core values. When you get down to traditions, it's all traditional values. So, but anyway, so in this particular case, that came to fruition because I had access to some of the people who I had worked with before, and I had a relationship already started in which, even though I was coming with an idea or a position that may seem radical and out there, they at least wanted to listen to what I had to say. And so just having access, and the thing is, the Republican right, we may differ on some issues, but really the core values, we actually are the same. We don't want a race-based government here in Hawaii.
Right. That's right.
You know, and that's exactly what they were saying. They don't want to see this started. It would set the United States back 150 years, back to slavery. And set Hawaii back as well. Right, yeah.
Yes.
And so, and we didn't want to be the ones responsible for doing that to the United States. It wasn't really getting in bed with the devil. It was getting in bed with people who may think differently on some things, but work together with us on the principles that were really what they really matter near truth.
Yeah.
And with what is really going to solve the problem as far as this was not, so let's get rid of this and look for some other direction. And for the principles of, say, self-governance and self-determination, when they found out Hawaiians had not decided to do this, this really affected them. They said, wow, you know, because it violates their own feeling of self-determination.
And freedom.
And freedom.
Which is what the United States is all about.
Exactly.
Yes.
Which gives us, now that we have worked together with the conservatives for against the Akaka bill and have actually prevailed, this gives us an avenue to discuss this matter further now. Mm-hmm. They want to know more about what it is that we Hawaiians really do want. If we didn't want Akaka, what is it that we do want?
Yeah, very good.
And now the door is open.
Very good.
Yes.
So, you know, since the Akaka bill's demise, I know we have, I'm sure you have, when I say we Kiwani Foundation, I'm sure you have, a lot of people have contacted us and said, well, okay, if the Akaka bill is not the answer, then what is? Mm-hmm. So, Leon, how would you answer that question, people? What do you see as the answer?
Well, I'm quite biased because I've already made up my mind that the return of the Hawaiian Kingdom, the restoration of the Hawaiian Kingdom, is the answer.
Yes.
And it is actually our only option. Mm-hmm. If we are to be honest and truthful, we don't want to be living under an occupation force anymore. If the United States wants to be honest and truthful, they don't want to be an occupation force in a friendly nation. So I see as the future and as our real option open to us is the restoration of the Hawaiian Kingdom. Now, we all know that this has already begun. There are a number of groups that have already said and declared and filed papers and said that they are the Hawaiian Kingdom and all that. And I believe that it's really a matter of a fairly short amount of time we're going to see these movements gel and coalesce and move in the direction of the actual restoration of the kingdom. Mm-hmm. And I also believe that if we continue this aloha and keep discussing this openly with people around the world, we're going to find that favor that accompanies us as Hawaiians will also ring true in our favor. Mm-hmm. And that we will get the support, not only of foreign nations, but the foreign nation called the United States as well.
Yeah.
I think that we can work something out in which we can do this with aloha. We can do a ho'oponopono and set it right, and allow the United States in some way to save face, so that they can gracefully withdraw, and then we can step in, giving a time of adjustment and of transition. We'll be able to step in and be our own nation. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very good, very good. You know, I'm sure that I know that there are some people here in Hawaii, probably not Native Hawaiian, mm-hmm. who were very scared by the prospects of the Akaka bill, are very scared by the prospects of the Hawaiian nation, mm-hmm. because they are sitting there and they're thinking words to the effect of, well, I'm a citizen of the United States. I have been all my life. If this thing comes to pass, I'm going to lose. I'm going to be kicked out of this country now. Mm-hmm. I won't have my place to live. I won't have my livelihood. I wouldn't have any of these other things. Mm-hmm. What do you say to them?
Well, I say to them that the Hawaiian Kingdom was actually a very progressive and very law-abiding and law-founded nation. And so, no, they wouldn't be kicked out, per se. I mean, you wouldn't automatically. What would happen is that we would have a new government here in which it would be a foreign country in which you can reside just like you do right now.
As a foreign national.
As a foreign national or an immigrant.
Yes.
And then we can work these things out over some time as far as any land issues and things like that. Those are going to be big issues to work out. But I think, again, if you approach it with an understanding that we're going to work this out together, mm-hmm. we're going to talk to one another, we're going to see what's really on the hearts and the minds of the people, not just Hawaiians, but those who live here as residents, mm-hmm. and we'll invite them. Let's participate in building this new government mm-hmm. together, mm-hmm. so that we all come out of this.
So here are these same principles coming up again that we've talked about earlier in the segment, which is not dictating from the top down, talking to everybody, having it be a society and culture that's inclusive, mm-hmm. not exclusive, a nation that is multi-ethnic,
Yes.
where everybody has a say, everybody has a vote, and everybody recovers the power to decide and create their future once again.
That's right.
Oh,
Isn't that great?
that sounds wonderful.
Yes, and it's
that
doable.
Sounds wonderful. Yes.
It's doable.
Yes.
I see it really closely in our
I
future.
do too. I do too. It sounds so exciting.
Uh-huh.
It sounds so exciting. So for our viewers sitting at home, I'm sure they're excited too. Leon, what would you say to them? What's your message to them of small steps they could take right now if they're sitting there thinking, "Wow, this sounds great. How can I kokua? How can I make this help make this happen?"
There is a phrase in Hawaiian called ho'olohe pono. That means to listen carefully. And it's good for all of us. And that is, first, instead of going charging headlong into some kind of thing, you sit down and you listen. You listen to what's really being said by the people, by the spirit within you. You really need to listen hard, carefully, and it'll come. The thing is, again, Hawaii has been placed strategically in the world, not just in a physical sense, but in a spiritual sense as well. We have a message for the world.
Yes.
A message that has to be heard now. The world's in desperate straits right now.
Yes.
And that message is aloha.
Yes.
And God put that not only into our hearts, but into our very beings. We are aloha. We reflect God's aloha. And the world knows that. That's why we have such favor. And I believe that if we can come together and demonstrate that in a practical sense, how we put our government together, how we live with one another, how we solve our problems together, that will be a message to the world that we can, the export is the wrong word, but we can be a beacon to say this is how it can be done. And I think that's what Hawaii's real contribution to the world is going to be.
You know what? I think you're right. I think you're right. That's a beautiful message. It's a powerful message. It has tremendous truth and integrity into it. That's what you guys, that's the message, really fundamental message you took to Washington, D.C. That's the message they heard, and we all saw what happened. And that it has been the message of the past, and certainly the message of the future. What a great way to end this segment. Leon, mahalo piha. Thank you very much for being on the show. Thank you very much for what you did in Washington, D.C. to save our people and save our nation. And again, we can't thank, from the bottom of my heart, I speak for our viewers. Thank you for what you did and the aloha you have for everything you do.
Mahalo.
Mahalo to you. This has been Voices of Truth, one-on-one with Hawaii's Future, brought to you by the Kiwani Foundation. I'm Ehuke Kahu Cardwell. Thanks for watching, and until next time, ahui ho!